Hello.
What up? What up?
Hello, hello,
Hey.
hello.
Hello,
Hello.
hello. What's up? What's up? What's up, NYC Gaming family? It is your boy Jah Love, also known as Jah Love the Brand, and I'm super excited today to be moderating today's panel. A little bit of background about me: I was born and raised in the Bronx. My parents are from Guatemala, so first generation here, and I have been living with HIV for over 19 years, 20 to be exact, in September. And so to bring this conversation in this forum and to bring our intersectionalities, it's amazing. I have a history with gaming. Not that I could have afford much gaming growing up in a two-bedroom apartment with six siblings, but when we did have games, the remote control was what we loved because we hit it just so that some of us wouldn't play. I had a Game Boy, I had a Super Nintendo, we had Atari, but my favorite loves is Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. Um, and so I want to bring on our panelists. We have an amazing group that is here to talk to you. Just know this is a safe space. This is an open and inviting space. I don't know why I was looking up there. I forgot. My camera's over here. This is an open and inviting space to have dialogue, to talk about our intersectionality and how we relate to gaming. And so I want to first start off with Mars. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Mars. My pronouns are they, them. And I am from the Albany upstate region. So happy to be here. Yeah, hello.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Um, Robert, please introduce yourself.
About to start talking and I realized I was muted. I'm Robert. I use he and him pronouns. I am also HIV positive, and I do lots of work around HIV here in New York City and in the state as well. So it is a personal as well as a lifelong commitment.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was
You're
reading
fine.
those.
You're fine.
Okay. Mother Lamia, please introduce yourself.
Grace and peace, and good afternoon, everyone. Mother Lamia. I reside in Albany, New York. I've been HIV positive for 16 years, and I'm just glad to be here on this beautiful Sunday. And oh boy, how much do I love to game! It's so much fun.
I know that's right. Joes, please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Jose, and
Oh,
no, you're good. You're good. I wanted to wait until this moment to call you out. No, it's okay.
please
But
do.
I use he him. I use he him pronouns. I was born in the Bronx, raised by Ecuadorian parents. I am currently in Boston doing my PhD, and I have been HIV positive for almost 2 years now. And yeah, I am currently in terms of gaming, PC Master Race, and Switch because Nintendo doesn't do anything with Steam. So
Understandable. And last but not least, Miss Aria, can you please introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Aria, pronouns she, hers. I am an HIV negative person who grew up with people in my family who were positive. And when I came out at 15, pre transition, I decided that when I got into LGBTQ work, that I would also get into the HIV field because I realized how the lack of education in Hispanic and Black cultures, like in regards to this topic. So I decided to make it a thing. So I'm now a certified HIV testing counselor, and I've been doing that for about 12 years.
Thank you.
I reside in,
Where you reside?
from New York City, Big
Yes.
Apple.
Okay. We have a great and thanks for bringing that to my notes. So this panel is not exclusively for people that are HIV positive. It's important to recognize that people experience violence, trauma because of HIV stigma or having lost folks in relation. Participants will be celebrating shared experience, and celebrate the ways in which we can highlight and uplift one another as a community through our gaming and gaming culture. Um, what's some of your favorite games that you are currently playing or have played? That's open to the panel right now.
I can start. I grew up playing Halo. My first game was Pokemon Red on the Game Boy Color. Still play Pokemon to this day. Can't stop. Been replaying the Master Chief Collection because nostalgia reasons. But I've been on a psychological horror binge. Currently playing Little Nightmares. I'm really trying to get through the Five Nights at Freddy's VR game. I currently freeze whenever I get into that environment. But no, that's currently what I'm playing.
Okay. Anybody else? It's open. This is open.
I'll go.
Mhm.
I grew up in the Sega Genesis generation. So I still have my Sega Genesis. I still have my Nintendo 64. I'm a PlayStation head. I mostly do RPGs. So like Final Fantasy, Persona, the Tales of series, Lord of the Rings. Like that's always like those games. Kingdom Hearts have always been like I've been a huge fan of. I need a minute, baby. I'm on live. I still play them to this day, and and Resident Evil. Those are like my to go to, but everything within those genres is like what I mostly specifically play.
Okay.
Give me some board games.
The board games.
Listen, I started. I had an Nintendo. I mean, I played Atari games when I was when I was younger. You know, those of us of a certain age remember those things. You know, those original systems. I had the first Nintendo. I loved some Duck Hunt and some RC Pro Am when I was 11. And then when my father and my sister used to fight over the damn thing all the time, I was like, "Fuck this shit! I ain't got time for this. I'm off." But I have always loved the idea of just games in general, whatever they are, tabletop board games. Like, you want to play Yahtzee? Let's go. You want to play Categories is probably my favorite board game of all time because you sit around and just make up words. And if you are a fan of alliteration like I am, no matter what the letter is, I will come up with 6 words in a sting for whatever category you give me, and I will get all the points. So board games, any day. I'm currently trying to play Bayonetta, and I have a block. I'm going to play it. I will finish it, or I will never hear the end of it from Ben or Rafi. But currently play Bayonetta.
Right. So we move on. So I have a question for you. So how did your relationship with gaming culture change as you became familiar with HIV in any way, shape, or form? That's a very heavy hitting question, but if we're gonna get into it, let's get into it.
So I can start with that one. So for me, I didn't mention how long I'd been HIV positive. So I was actually born HIV positive. So for me, gaming kind of goes back to sitting in like hospital chairs getting treatment, you know, and playing cards with other people who were also getting treatment. So like I did a lot of board games, a lot of card games. I love Scrabble. um, me and my aunt who raised me, we that was something that like we bonded over as I got older was those Scrabble games. And so now I just kind of do a lot of strategy stuff with that. I'll play Scrabble or Boggle all day long. But games like that were kind of what got me through, you know what I mean, kind of being sick all the time, because I was pretty steadily sick until about the age of 10. Um, I learned all those kind of like simple, you know, board games that kids can play and stuff like that. But it was just a way to have fun and escape the moment. And then as I got older, I was a Tony Hawk fan. I've always been a Tony Hawk fan, so I played Tony Hawk since it was on PC. Um, and so now, honestly, I don't play as many online games, but like I play Call of Duty to digress after a long work day. Play a few rounds of live. but for the most part, I am more of a board games, Yahtzee. You know what I mean? Like, let's just pull all the games out and pick 5 for the night. Like, I'm that person. That's how, I guess that's my answer to the question.
No, I appreciate your response. I forgot about the games in the waiting room, and how I always look forward to those. I don't know how much the germs was being spread on them, but I definitely was. I definitely was still looking forward to it.
Different times.
Right, different times. Anybody else related to the question? No. I think that it's so important for us to recognize how sometimes our coping mechanism, whether big or small, plays a role in our mental health, in aiding our movement through society, and also finding other communities outside that you didn't think that you would be able to relate to. Um, so, having another question for the panel. Many community-based organizations working with HIV-affected communities also having programming for youth, specifically LGBTQ plus youth, and also programming like game night and playing cards, dominoes, socials. How important are these spaces, and what ways can we continue to utilize gaming as a way to increase community engagement while uplifting HIV-affected communities? I know it's a long and powerful question, but
No, it is, but I think, I mean, it's critical, right? I think we have to create spaces where people can just be themselves. And so, like, if, you know, board games, like for me, are a huge thing because it's an opportunity to sit around at the table with somebody and you're having conversations and you're laughing and joking and fighting over the rules of the game, right? Like, those are things that just become memorable things that, you know, I can think of times when my mother and my sisters and I would just play cards the night before Thanksgiving, right? Like, that was a tradition. And so we played cards and while we were doing everything. And so, but growing up and doing those things, and if we create space where folks can come and have fun and have conversations, and these can be natural conversations that people can just
right,
come up with during, like, while they're there. But it's also an opportunity to, like, as folks doing the work, to have more of those intentional conversations, right? Like, how do we have real honest conversations about sexual health? Real sexual health, not the bullshit that, like, they keep spoon feeding people, telling, like, this is how you know, let's stop talking about risk and start talking about behavior, right?
right.
It's okay for you to do the thing you want to do. I mean, I could preach on this for hours, but I think it's critical for us to create space that is open and inviting, and games is the way to do that.
I agree. Anybody else want to tackle that question?
Yeah, no. Being recently diagnosed, I still very vividly remember how my diagnosis was literally the only thing that I thought about every minute of every day. And that first year, not literally, I've lied to my friends about what I was feeling. And, like, I say, oh, it's just school, it's just this, it's just that, and not being fully able to, like, accept my diagnosis and sort of just talk about it. And again, having these spaces where there is an understanding that we all share this experience is extremely important. When I entered my first space of other HIV positive people, I didn't feel that, where I couldn't talk about it, where I just like it was just something that shouldn't be talked about at all. Like, even in this panel, I was like, should I say? Should I? But I get confidence from just being around people with a similar background as I have, and maybe asking for advice on how to cope with my pretty recent diagnosis.
I would say it's first, it's okay not to be okay. Um, when I'm hearing people newly diagnosed, I never run to the, I never go to the clinical, medical, all that. I try to assess the human being and what is that human being going in that current state. And could be so much. And so, to give you the permission that it's okay not to be okay. I think a lot of us don't. I know for me, I didn't get that. It was just like straight into care. You're gonna be okay, and all these things. But I was diagnosed at such in my late teens that I was still trying to figure out and navigate myself, my sexuality, and the world. And then my health on top of that was just way too much. And no one really gave me the space for that. Then I became a hermit. And so I just want to say it's okay not to be okay. And that healing is a journey, not a destination. And to learn all that you can about HIV. Um, as much information as you can, because it helps when you recognize and understand what's happening with your body for a third party. When I mean a third party, the doctors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
One of the first nonprofits I worked for specifically catered to HIV positive folks and helped with like housing. And they did like a lot of MSM groups. For those that don't know what MSM means, and like that's men who have sex with men. And then they catered to the trans community. But as a gamer growing up and then coming into this nonprofit, so I implemented a majority, just about every nonprofit I worked for, I implemented a gaming program. So that folks who played video games had like a space that they could go to. I remember the first nonprofit I worked for, the executive director, we were having a meeting, and they wanted to implement ideas for ways that we can get people to come in to their space. And when I suggested a gaming program, he questioned it. Older man, and I believe at that time, like in his like late 50s. And he just questioned. He was like, "Oh, I don't understand the point of video games. I don't see what's the what it's for, And then like I had to like give him a reality check. I'm like, well, there are a lot of HIV positive people, which is the community that you cater to, that play video games, right? And then you're trying to cater to youth, and no disrespect or anything. I said, but it's not from your time. It's not for you. It's not something you do. That's not, that's not your cup of tea. That's fine. But there should be no reason as to why you're like turning down the idea when
right.
I'm the youngest here in this meeting, and you're asking me what can we do to get people to come in to this space, and you're not being inclusive, and you're like already cutting off the idea. Meanwhile, mind you, about 2 weeks later, we had another meeting, and he tried to use the same idea that I had and try to make it seem like it was his. So I called his collar out on that one too. So over time, he ain't like me because I was very big on stuff like that. Like, why be so inclusive? Go ahead. Why try to be so inclusive if you're gonna try to kick out a certain community, especially when it's specifically catering to people that need this?
Right.
I've always been very big on implementing that because I feel like it's very important because there's a huge lack of education within the gaming community when it comes to the HIV topic. And then there's a huge lack of representation or education for them in regards to being queer in these spaces because there's like
right.
The gaming community is very big, the LGBTQ community is very big, and people seem to think like it's a very small community, but we're actually a lot bigger than people realize. And I think that's part of why like I've decided to like branch out of working as like a health advocate and like or like working with our community, doing like working at nonprofits, and I've decided to like start integrating and becoming a trans gamer. Because I feel like there's a very small representation of trans people within the gaming community. And then people who have the education that I have in regards to this topic, I think it's very important. And I think there's a huge gap between it that needs to be bridged.
Right. And you're bringing up so much amazing points. And then like the bureaucracy and nonprofit organization, right? But there's also this other side where, non-clinical nonprofit, not these organizations that we gamers hold up space, right? Lamita, can you talk about like your experience in the faith-based community If there was any gaming night in any churches that you have been a part of that helps along with your journey, or that you introduce.
Um, great question. And I do believe that recreational spaces is what's missing in a lot of our nonprofit settings or clinical settings, even for adults. Everyone can always go back the older you get, you always say, "Oh, I wish I was back in my 20s." This is something about being youthful, the innocence of it, the eagerness, the willing to learn, the willing to experience. Um, but I had a great opportunity growing up, and you talk about community. Recreation was a big part. My father, through ministry, he founded a basketball team, and every weekend, he also worked within the community and took me along with him. This is how I got the first-hand experience. But every weekend, different individuals from the community would get together and round up the community kids, and we'll take them like to a putt golf or to the arcade, because I come from the generation where we went to the arcade to play video games at the mall, put them quarters in, okay?
Okay.
That was the meetup, baby, honey. To go to the arcade, meet you at the arcade at the mall at 3 o'clock, honey, and you have so much fun. But also what I found out within those recreational settings, a lot of times when you're playing sports or whatever the case might be, even when it comes to playing, the gaming system, it also teaches people individual skills. It teaches team building skills. It teaches integrity. It teaches honesty. It teaches discipline and also how to be patient. And it also teaches people how to take a L and then try again. And so there's a lot of lessons that can be taught in a gaming setting. So it's just not, for a recreational woo-hoo, let's have fun. But I think it's a missed opportunity. And I'd like to see gaming come back, or even, gaming and recreational spaces come back within all communities. I feel it will help the generation that we have today. Because, we say I'm 38, but I wouldn't say I grew up fast, but we kind of had to. Life is just different, and the way how life is today, these kids, like, you don't get your youth back. That's one thing money can't buy. And so, providing space that people can learn, nurture, grow, be themselves, right?
Right.
A lot of times in gaming settings, you're forced to have to play with someone. You know what I mean? So that for that child that might be an introvert, this could be a space for them to, not be shy and gain access and gain friends and all network and just build community. And it's definitely a good way to relieve stress and deal with depression and anxiety. So let's bring mental health into it as well. Some people don't run to a narcotic or a drink. They run to the video game system. That I know people that play video games all day, and that's their safe space. It keeps them sane. And so yeah, that's my answer to that question. It's definitely a space that we need to see more of.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And so I want to kind of segue into we have this whole chat for about what year somebody changed, this whole Netflix and chill. I know for me, it was gaming and chilling, right? That was the segue on okay, I'm going to this boy house and he invited me to play some games. I don't know what it may lead to, but I'm going. Whether I knew how to play the game or not, I was going. And so talking about, sexual health and, when people associate Netflix and chilling is always associated with having some type of sexual encounter, that you're going more than to just do this, right? So, gaming and chilling, has everybody had that experience, with just an experience as far as that it went past gaming, right? Because if we're talking about HIV, we're talking about, STIs and something that could come from having a sexual encounter, right? Have you had a gaming and chilling encounter?
I have a very, very specific response to this question. So my best friend, who is a gamer, in case you missed this morning's panel, I'm kinky. I'm also poly. I'm also very body positive. And so I'm in all kinds of spaces. But so my best friend started hosting naked gamer nights. And,
Well,
it was...
please, and please do not shy on this information.
And
What
one of the
happened there?
things... Yeah, exactly. And so one of the things that is super interesting about that is because, these are also like spaces that we intentionally create for folks to hang out and just be themselves without clothes, because sometimes that's I mean, even just being naked with other people is not often something that you are allowed to do, right? There's so much about just being able to just be in space and naked. Like, you got to go to the place where that can happen. And so creating that space, doing something that everybody likes to do, gaming, it's interesting too, because whenever we tried to introduce new people, the automatic assumption was like, oh, we're gonna have sex. And it's like, maybe, but we're naked and we're gaming. And if sex happens, okay, great. If it doesn't happen, okay, great. We still had fun. Right.
Right.
And so what is it to normalize and just sort of routinize that we can create spaces that are for whatever we want them to be, and whatever happens is great regardless of, whatever. Right. And so yes, maybe we will have sex, but that's not the whole point. The whole point is that we're going to be in space. We're going to do things that we like to do together, being naked, playing games, building community amongst ourselves.
Mhm.
And if we have sex, that's awesome.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. Anybody else will have to add to that? Gaming and chilling.
So disclaimer, like I've only been going through the hormone process for 2 years. So I'm going to be talking about the experiences of my twin brother. That's how I refer to that person. So Aria has not had too many gaming and chill experiences yet due to, anxiety, integrating myself back into society as this person. It's not an easy process. But my twin brother definitely had a lot of stories. I think for him, video games was like a safe space. Over time, like I remember I would spend summers like the whole summer like in my house playing video games by myself, and it was mostly RPG games because they're like one person games and they have like very long storylines. So you spend the whole summer exploring the whole world. When I started just integrating myself into the community, however, I was always a social person, but like finding that confidence, I guess, or seeing myself as attractive, even though I was an attractive person, I personally just didn't feel that way, and it had to do with my own dysphoria as hiding that I was a trans person. My way of getting friendly was meeting up with people and playing video games. Had some good experiences, some bad ones, but overall, like gaming itself, kind of like helped me get comfortable hanging out with a person. I'm a type of person, like I'm very big on vibes and energy. Like if I like your energy and your vibe as a person, saying if something happens, it happens. If I'm not feeling it, we're gonna continue playing these video games. And if you feel the type of way, then I could just leave because I'm not about to make you think that I'm just here for sex. I always like made that very clear with people. Like oh, so yeah. I mean, we're flirting, you know what I'm saying? We're hanging out, but if I'm not feeling this, ain't nothing happening. You're not gonna get up in this, honey. So like that was always a big thing for me. Trying to remember like an experience that like really defined. Like I have some amazing friends actually like over the years that like it was the intent of going to game and chill, and then we just ended up like becoming like really good friends and nothing ever happening. So I've actually made like some really good friends over the years that have really been there for me through my transition journey actually. And like have supported me and like have become like my brothers and my sisters, because a lot of us don't have family, or like excuse me, let me rephrase that. A lot of us lose or become detached from our biological family due to how they themselves feel about whether it is being gay, being trans, or queer in general. So I have created like my own family due to gaming and in the gaming world, due to gaming and chilling. I will say that I learned that just because they're cool or just because they can relate to you in regards to the gaming stuff, it doesn't mean you're gonna be compatible everywhere else. And I can say a lot of some of my bad experiences were from gaming and chilling. And it could be due to, again, goes back to like the lack of education, right, that people in our community have. That video game, right? So you're like people who have negative feelings about femme presenting folks, or people who have certain opinions about just like, oh, you need to be masculine, or like what a top and bottom is, or things like that. I've always been very big on like, you can Google everything, literally. So I should not have to sit here and educate you and give you free emotional labor when you literally got the time to Google everything else, then you got time to Google these questions. That's just how I personally feel. And like one thing I always made sure, like even though I was going through my own battles of accepting who I was and wanting to transition, I was still very like affirming, and I did not like tolerate disrespect towards like femme folks, trans women. So like if I hung out with somebody and like we started talking and hanging out, like I made it very evident that I was very like respectful towards femme presenting folks. I was very respectful. Like I was very big on those topics and conversations. So when it got to a point where like you could tell there was a huge disconnect between me and them, I'm already turned off. I don't. The sexual part is already, there's no, it's not even gonna happen. Like I've already just like I've like mentally I've already turned that switch off.
Right.
A lot of I feel like a lot of people within the gaming community that isolate themselves, because acknowledging that like mental health is a thing, right? And acknowledging that a lot of us that spend so much time in gaming, we isolate ourselves so much, we start to neglect our body, we start to neglect ourselves, right? And remembering that self-care is important, and some people don't know how to practice that, So I've had a lot of, just personally, I've had a lot of bad, unhygienic experiences with people in the gaming, and like when I would do gaming and chill, because it's like, no disrespect, but if I'm coming over and there's a chance that we are going to mess around, why did you not shower before me coming, right? Or like, why did you not take proper steps on your hygiene, right? To take this out, we just being real, right? It's not, if these are your intentions, right? Because this is a conversation that people don't want to have, but this is a fact. We all have had this type of experience. And if you are somebody who explores sexually, right, and you're exploring into the gaming world with other people, right, self-care and hygiene is a very important thing, not just for the other person, but also for yourself, right?
Right.
Because when times come out where you go into society, not for nothing, people can be very disrespectful. People are very shady. You know what I mean? I'm the type of person, like, if you're a friend of mine and like that's something that's off, I'm like very quick to be like, yo, come to the bathroom real quick. Let me help you up. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm very big on that. But a lot of my experience, a lot of my bad experiences were mostly with people within the gaming community, not just necessarily when it came to hygiene, but due to like their lack of education. So that's partly also why, like, now that I've like slowly started branching out of the work field that I've been doing for so long, like that's why a part of why like I want to do this and why I'm like a part of all of this, because I feel like it's so important to have these conversations, because like especially acknowledging that a lot of these folks don't have family or friends that genuinely care about them, that genuinely reach out to them, ask them how they're doing, asking them if they're okay, and having that conversation like, hey, like, did you practice self-care today? Did you pamper yourself? Did you do these things that are really important? And I feel like a lot of people within the HIV positive community, when they deal with that diagnosis, and they isolate themselves and they get into their little gaming space and they get so lost into that, sometimes over time they'll start to neglect themselves, because a lot of people go through that mindset of who's gonna love me, who's gonna be there for me, I'm gonna lose a lot of people. So I think overall it's very important to practice self-care, and I think it's very important to check up on these people who are dealing with these situations and making sure that they are okay, and asking them how they're doing, how are you, and making sure that they're practicing that self-care when they do their gaming and chilling with people.
That is true, and thank you for bringing up a lot of points. But also, that's not everybody experience that happens to be HIV positive.
That's why I said this is my personal experience.
Yeah.
Very big on I statements because like people can take something the wrong way. That's why I said my personal experience.
Just want to reiterate that.
Very transparent. Yes. When I say I statements, please don't anybody take that offensively. This is me talking about my personal experiences, whether it was the people in the gaming community who were negative, who were positive, who like in overall, this is just the experience of what my twin brother had went through at that time. And also just acknowledging the lack of self-care I even had for myself when it came to a lot of things in those experiences, right? Because I've had experiences where I didn't practice safe sex, that I had experiences where I didn't practice self-care, right? I had experiences where I just went in and my depression had been so bad, like I didn't care what happened to me, or I didn't care about, like, what's the word? Self-care for bottoms, right? Because that's very important. Making sure that the partner that's topping you is asking you, like, are you okay? Because that while playing video games, right? Those are things I didn't practice at that time as that person. So it's always acknowledging, like, now as the person I am now, acknowledging, like, where did I go wrong? What did I do wrong? And what do I need to do better in my new experiences as this person?
Thank you. I thank you again. You brought up so many great, important speaking points, and that some of us probably have experienced, but didn't even realize it's even important to discuss or talk about. And it's always great to talk about experience. So I have another question for the panel. It's a heavy-hitting one. So there's important conversation happening around representation and inclusivity throughout Black and LGBTQI plus communities when it comes to video game and gaming companies. Something that often forgotten throughout these conversations: how is HIV is rarely, if never, mentioned or brought up, and how stigma has a huge impact as to what it means to you if there are gaming characters that are openly identified as living with HIV, or more inclusive sexual health conversation occurring where it makes sense throughout gaming. Does that make any sense? Do I need to reread it? Does that make any sense? Okay. Who wants to tackle? Which panel wants to tackle that? Let me call on you all. I'll reread it again. There's an important conversations happening around representation and inclusivity throughout Black and LGBTQI plus companies when it comes to video gaming and gaming companies. Sometimes something that often is forgotten through these conversations is how HIV is rarely, if never, mentioned or brought up, and how stigma has a huge impact as to why. What would it mean to you if there was a game character that openly identifies as living with HIV, or more inclusive sexual health conversations occurring where it makes sense throughout gaming? Very long and time.
Representation matters, right? Like it's such a boilerplate answer, but I think when I was diagnosed, I was already an advocate. I was already doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember making a decision in those early days that I did not want to do HIV advocacy. I needed to deal with my own shit. I needed to figure myself out. I needed that time in that space. And there was not intentional conversations happening. There was not spaces or places where I could see things being done about it. And over time, the more I learned, the more I felt like, yes, there are people doing the work, but it doesn't feel like it's for me. At the time I was 400 pounds and a member of the bear community and kinky. And yes, HIV was talked about everywhere from a testing perspective. But who's having real conversations with people? Who's having conversations about what does it mean to have safer sex, right? Because I don't want to wear a condom. And you can hate me for that. You can be mad at me for that. But that was a choice that I made. And those were decisions that I made. But nobody taught me that I needed to think about other things when I was having sex, because I'm from the 90s and things are a little bit different back then, right? And so, from the 90s, I was born in the 70s, grew up through the 80s and 90s. But I was out of high school in 1996, and so the world has changed, and I see the ways that the world has changed.
Right.
But I think I'm always thinking about, we have to be able to see themes in the spaces where we're at. And so if I'm just a gamer, if that's the thing that I eat, breathe, and sleep, and HIV is never talked about, then that's a whole population that we're just missing. And then when something happens, there's nothing there. Like, maybe the thing that brought me so much joy let me down, right? Because we have the ability to be on Twitch and game and have conversations, right? And that was sort of how these panels came to light, right? We are gamers and we're having this online virtual experience, and
Right.
while we're gaming, we're having meaningful conversations with people.
Yep.
And so what does it mean if we create games that cause us to have more meaningful conversations? Not everything is good, but things can create discourse. Things can create conflict, which cause us to have more conversations. And so I'm looking for those developers and those gamers to put something out there that says, listen, this is real world. And yes, gaming can be an escape from real world, because we all use it that way for self-care and fun. But at the same time, it can be the impetus for really, really, really great conversations. And so how do we create characters that are real in whatever way that we envision them to be real, right? Because we love that about them.
Right. I think that sometimes we don't take our power and consumer as a consumer, and if we do, we sometimes keep it on the customer service level, right? And then maybe just some what they call it, focus groups, because when thinking about an HIV character, I do like representation, right, in media when they have some characters in media. But then I also go back and I'm like, are they going to go to the stereotype, right?
Right.
And so when coming up with a gaming character, I don't think that we should allow companies that didn't properly represent us to give us what they version of what they feel, or we should be the one to say, if I'm going to continue putting stock into your company, this is what we need to see moving forward, and have these characters have integrity, and you know what I'm saying, and not just the stereotype.
Right.
And I'm always just like, why? I'm not giving nobody grounds to tell me what I should look like, or what a community that I'm a part of should be looking, should represent. Because respectability politics is bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Think of respectability politics. Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Yes. So
I got you, Mars, right after.
Oh, sorry. But when it comes to gaming has a very unique form of storytelling in terms of its integrability with the audience, where the audience has a direct interaction with the outcomes of the video game. And the thing with representation in the different types of media, and why people have to be careful when it comes to how they're being represented, is that once, let's say, for me, earlier in my diagnosis acceptance journey, when I haven't had a conversation about my diagnosis, well, me having this conversation through this character will have me understand this is what a conversation about my HIV diagnosis is supposed to look like. This is what relationships with people who don't have HIV and maybe also have HIV should look like. And, video games have been a great escape because of the fact that we develop these relationships that we may not have in real life. We might have these different figures that these RPG characters, for example, have that we might not have in our personal lives. So thinking about a specific example of before me in real life having a conversation about my diagnosis, playing a video game about another character talking about their diagnosis, well, that'll help me understand what that conversation will look like. I will feel that I will feel that pressure. I will feel that tension in the scene. We all, as gamers, we all experience the tension of a conversation, of a very important conversation, and we feel those emotions. And that's what we need to do to take that step to have those actual conversations with the people that we love around us. So and that's what the key thing about representation in gaming is. It's the uniqueness of the integrability of the audience, to the player, to the video game, and the relationships the game has that is sort of practice for us. So
Yeah.
that's sort of my input in terms of representation in video games.
I thank you for that, Jose. Mars?
When I think about this question, like I'm a very visual person, so I had to kind of put it into perspective in my head. And so I think about the game that I played a lot on PC, which was The Sims back in the day, right? You think about all these different families and things that you can have. Now I know The Sims, doesn't use like English language to like communicate and stuff like that, but you still have all these places on this map, all these types of relationships, dynamics that you can create and have. Right. So why not in games like that, whether the dialogue is English or not, why not put like a testing clinic or something like that so that it gets programmed into the game to like think about those things if you're going to have whether one sexual partner, no, like allowing those other identities to kind of be talked about and surfaced, as well as create a space where like, okay, now these counselors or whoever they meet with can now, give them some, information and education back. So, I just feel like that's kind of the context that I think about it is that it could be easily applied because there's so many games that create this map of places for you to go, and they allow you to have all these, relationships. They're very inclusive in the types of relationships you can have, but they're not offering any kind of like resource or education to kind of support the inclusivity, if that makes sense. That's my input on that.
No, Mars, you make a whole bunch of sense. And I think about like, you know, anime characters that gaming have been influenced, or just one franchise building another one, right? So the two off the top of my head, I'm thinking about X-Men and Naruto. Like I related to X-Men because I was just like, being an HIV positive person, I was just like, these are how the mutants was being treated different because because they were mutants. um, it's so relatable to HIV positive people, how we've stigmatized. And then just like with Naruto and his character, because he had something living within him, just the same like the mutants, what you would call it, was being stigmatized, not understanding. And so we see the landscape, and then they become the heroes in the story, right? And so there are certain great examples that the gaming community and these companies can really build off to have a great storyline and build some great characters, based on what I've seen. Um, Now, would they, or how often? I think that really takes that really holds. We have to hold ourselves accountable to say that what if we're going to spend, then we should see what we want to see. We should get what we want and see what we want to see, or pay for what we want to see. Does that make any sense?
And or
Um,
what we want to see. I'm slowly but surely kind of shifting from the mentality of expecting to get what you need from other people. We hold the power, the ability, we have the vision. You create your own space. And when it comes to representation, that's a very slippery slope because it's from whom's perspective is the representation being put out into the universe. And so what I find that something that I kind of like, and I'm gonna relate it to Sesame Street, like we always knew Bart Ernie was gay. And so now they come out, they let people know because, and I think that was a smart choice versus making totally new characters. Because when you create something new, that's when you can put your biases on what the character's going to look like, where they're going to come from. But if you go ahead and bring lights, like bring up sexuality, bring up race, now they have a black, Sesame Child doll or whatever. It was like, say Elmo, he's red, right? Say Elmo was to start talking about HIV. The shock value will be gone because people are familiar with Elmo. So it's like, oh wow, this whole time we never knew that Elmo had a sister. Elmo could be introducing his sister or brother that's HIV positive, or gender non-conforming individual that's that's HIV positive, and integrate the conversation like that. So using familiar platforms or something that's familiar to the masses to bring it up, I think that would be a better way to see representation, because also you no longer do or make people feel bad about having an HIV diagnosis. For people that are living with HIV, we work every day to stop stigma. So even with the messaging, some of the messaging that we have is stigmatic, if that's the word. It's stigmatizing some of the messaging.
Right.
What I like to do is make HIV normalize it. So you just need to get tested regardless, because whether we like it or not, with all these advancements of medication, it's is it even worth it to even put all that energy on? Okay, we need everyone to be, speak about it, boldly about it. No, we don't need everyone. We just need a few to be intentional, to be strategic with spaces that we're creating as we continue to educate our communities to make people feel comfortable, because everyone is not going to come out, and everyone doesn't have to come out about that issue, because it's so manageable these days that it's thank God for the 1 pill a day for those people that take 1 pill a day. That's very relatively simple. I'm not going to say it's simple, because if you have pill fatigue, you just over it. But that 1 pill a day, life is just so much different in 2021 living with HIV, even for individuals that are newly diagnosed. Life is much so different, and it's hope on the other side, and it's one day at a time as it relates to that. So I want to see more gamers, HIV positive people, Black, brown, trans, create those spaces themselves, create those characters themselves, be in control of your own story and own narrative. And I think that's a win-win situation versus leaving it up to companies and stuff, because it's all about the green dollar. And if they don't see a profit and give you the real truth, they're not going to give you the real truth, because the real truth is that we're living. The real truth is that we're all overcomers. Each day that we still here, that is the truth. And it's woe is me mentality. It's the end of the world. Even though it might feel like that for that moment that you're processing the information. If you're newly diagnosed, if you've been diagnosed and you're just tired, everything is a process. It's okay to acknowledge that and sit in that. But days are coming, better days are here, and we just got to find ways that we can remessage HIV. I digress.
Yeah.
Yes to all of that.
Yes to all that. I'm not epiphany, but I just had this moment while speaking that, um, there's this whole talk that, real world versus gaming world. It almost brings to the conversation ballroom, and how ballroom doesn't really relate to real world, when you can find the similarities and you apply it to both worlds, right? Some people told ballroom participants that they couldn't even make a living or a life off of it. And there are people right now living proof that ballroom, that 8-slep ballroom, are creating amazing real lives for themselves. In the same way, in the spectrum with the gaming community. People that play games and now having, doing consulting with these companies, creating their own games and narratives and stuff like that. And so I'm just thinking about how impactful the gaming world is, and that we don't give it that much credit, that we keep it separated, right? We keep the separation, that this is real, this is not real, where people are making very lucrative lives. Which brings me to a point what if Ash was HIV positive? And the impact that would have had across the globe, because Pokemon is a global phenomenon. Gaming, what if Ash was HIV positive, that was included into the storyline, and say would it have been a huge global phenomenon? And that's a question to the panel.
Yes, I think it goes so differently with the character. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I'd say yes, it would. I think it would be.
And I think this goes into the conversation of sensitivity, right? Like how I think we just need to rip the Band-Aid off. I feel like, you know, this has been an ongoing issue for more than 30 years, right? If people are ready to talk about Tom, Sari, Susan, and Mary, why are we having these conversations too, right? And recognizing that a lot of the people that are too sensitive to the topic are people who are HIV negative and not necessarily affected by this situation and what's going on, right? And they want that Band-Aid left on for them, but they're not sensitive towards the people who are actually affected by it and who are actually living with this, right? So I think it's the, again, lack of education, and then them not wanting to have the conversation and not wanting to acknowledge right, their faults, right? Acknowledging how they treat people who are HIV positive, how they interact with people who are HIV positive, right? Not wanting to incorporate it into gaming or into shows or into things like that because they want to continue living this life of delusion and keeping that Band-Aid on when they don't even treat people with the same respect that they want to be given in regards to these topics. So I feel like it really whew, if it was Miss Pokemon and it was with Ash, honey, that would be a very big blow up. And but I think like that would be like in the I'm gonna use the word in the name of Raffi, that would be iconic and legendary for them to incorporate something like that, right? Because it would be a very big global like conversation. Like, you know, like with the show Pose and how within the first 10 minutes they ripped off the Band-Aid, right? They gave her diagnosis and like people were like, oh, whoa, this is what the show's about. Yes, like it's actually incorporating and showing like this is what people actually go through. It's not as sensitive as people try to make it seem, where it's not as like, you know, princess and skipping down the road, skipping down the street with flowers in your hand, type of thing. This is an everyday struggle, right? There are people who are HIV positive that are killed, that are beaten up, they're kicked out of their family. These people go through physical and verbal abuse and mental, spiritual abuse, right? And so if their everyday life, there's zero empathy, right? Or people being sensitive towards their everyday lives and what they go through, why should we continue to keep this Band-Aid on for people who are not mindful of said community, right? And also to piggyback about like the X-Men stuff, like dating back to when X-Men was created and the storyline, like their original intention was to like create a story showing like the divide of what's going on today, right? And how people of color and the queer community, how we're divided from the cis white community, right? And that's like that was the original intention with X-Men, was to show like exactly how people who are positive, people who are gay, people who are black, people who are Hispanic, what they deal with on their everyday life. That's exactly what they were incorporating in X-Men, showing like people who are mutants, how they're treated compared to the rest of society, in regards to that aspect. But yeah.
Right.
I kind of want.
Go ahead.
I kind of want to add one very quick thing.
Oh, please.
In that, one of the more expected reactions is, what is the point of this? In which the answer is, well, if there's supposed to be a point, then what was the point with me? With my diagnosis? There isn't a point. It's a new reality that we just have to get used to. It's nothing more than one more responsibility. That's it. And you know, with come responsibility comes, you know, come responsibility gets responsibility. Whatever. I I tried to slip what I was trying to say there, but with responsibility comes growth, and regardless of what it is. And it's a very unique type of growth where we have this challenge that will stick with us for the rest of our lives. And that's an extremely traumatic thing. And that induces a lot of change. And what that character or person will grow into is going to be absolutely beautiful. And that, if we're going to say if there's a point to a diagnosis, then that would be it. That there is a growth that will come from it. And that's it. There's nothing more to say on that.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. I'm even thinking about this panel. I'm just like, my epiphany is that life is literally a game. How are we separating it? I, I got some one-ups. I've gotten like that. I could look at my life like this has been a game. Like who, and sometimes I've been winning it, and there's been plenty of times I've lost some portions.
Moderna gave me some stats boosts.
Okay. I think that's possibly I think that we also use gaming as to help us strategize in our real life scenarios. Um even when it comes to like defeat, like how we get so compulsive, not compulsive obsessive, was like, I gotta beat this game, I gotta end it. There is the satisfying feeling of ending a game that you have worked so hard and not go through the cheat sheets or the websites. Although that's part of life hacks too, because sometimes it's about working harder. I mean, working smarter, not harder, right?
That's right. That's right. I completely
Um,
agree with your life as a game, and like sort of, because when we were talking about kink earlier, um, someone it wasn't on the panel, but somebody was like, oh, painful things, challenging things. I put myself in situations where things are hard. And I was like, you need to just reframe it. You like a challenge. And when you surpass the challenge, achievement unlocked. And, it's about how we frame things and the way that we look at situations. And I think that gaming helps with that so tremendously. And we can, all of the conversations that we've had for the panels, I keep saying the panels because like they're all there, but they're so interchangeable and relatable around how the skills that we use when we're playing games are relatable to real life. It's about, working hard, figuring things out, trying again until you get it right, right? And those are all things that we do in real life. And it might be easier to do on a video game, but it's still just as challenging. And we will spend the time that we need to do playing the game. And so if we could bridge the gap of like, how do we bring harder conversations or topics into gaming in ways that are meaningful and representative and authentic to folks' lives? Like, just imagine what could come from those things too.
totally agree.
So I would not be a good mathematician if I didn't bring this up, because you're making a perfect segue.
Yes.
There is an algorithm called the game of life. Very small rules, and it is proven that there is absolutely no way you can distinctly know how the game of life is going to be unless you actually go through it every step of the way. So, and that's a proof. There's no way to debut that. It has been proven. So the only way to know is to keep moving forward every step of the way and taking each step with pride and knowing that you shouldn't have it any other way.
Right now, the game of life is kicking my ass, especially during this Mercury retrograde. Kicking my ass. um, y'all feel it. Y'all feel it. Okay, so I have a few more questions, and we're gonna wrap up this awesome panel. So talking about panel, often when people think of panel discussion centering HIV affected communities, there are lack of space held for a celebration of life and community. and the ways that we practice community care. Gaming can be an important way people connect with one another throughout the community. Do you have any experience that you can share? Does that make any sense? Do I need to reread it?
I mean, this panel is
Reread
a
it.
perfect representation. You can reread it. I have an answer, but I'm slightly at more of an advantage because I helped put this all together. But I mean, this in itself is just the perfect example of that. Like, I am someone who I'm HIV positive. I have a great job. I have worked hard to get where I'm at. I said that I wasn't going to be an advocate, and then I was appointed to sit on the New York State HIV advisory body by the governor of the state. Like, fuck it. Like, hello. And those weren't things that I set out to do, but it happened, and I keep doing it because it matters, and I keep meeting great people along the way. I keep bumping into people who have different experiences, similar experiences, totally out there experiences, and I keep learning and I keep growing and I'm better for it. And like I can't be I'm just very lucky. And it would be remiss to say that I'm not very lucky to have all of this and to be in this space and to share these conversations, and and in return I'm trying to push it forward and to create more spaces and to do more so that other people have those same opportunities too.
I appreciate that comment. So I have two more questions. And so right now, as we're talking, let's say right now, the world is watching this conversation, and we're influencing change in a corporate pitch. Right now, like for each of you to pitch your game that is inclusive, that is inclusive, that teaches and talk about the intersectionalities of people and communities of color and HIV. What would that game look like? What would that main character be? And what day would you prefer for it to be released? Because game and releasing date does matter too. Okay, it impacts sales. The holiday time, they always try to release something during the holiday time. But so, what would your pitch be if you could sum up this panel on why we're having it, right? About our affected communities impacted. So I know it was off the fly, but I think as gamers, we played enough games to know, like, I would have did it this way. Whoever wants to tackle it first, go ahead. But I would like everybody to give not a long pitch, or just a pitch of what you think that would sell this game.
Honestly, the things that come up is very simplistic RPGs and like Undertale and visual novels, like Doki Doki Literature Club. Not the best example. Not the best example, but the first thing that came into my mind. But they are very simple in terms of how they're made and how they tell their story, but it has been, as we see, very, very, very impactful on whole communities, on whole in countries all over the world that have been able to tell their own story through these characters. And so I'm going to take the simple route and just go with an RPG or a visual novel to really tell these stories and build these relationships that, as I mentioned, are sort of practice to our own relationships in real life.
And when would you want to release it?
November. November's a good month. After like everyone's fresh from the mood of like doing whatever the heck they want on Halloween and sort of feeling the hominess of Thanksgiving or Christmas with our chosen or blood family.
Like that.
Probably overthought that a little bit, but
They listen. Okay.
I love Japanese culture. I love their games because they're very inclusive with everything. So it for me would be very um, science fiction, RPG, turn based with a very nice long story. Very queer inclusive. Um, and she would be released during Pride Month. And if not, I would want, like, personally, I would probably want to incorporate a lot more because of how like they are with their games. They're very like diverse in regards to like having queer representation, trans people within the game, and you don't even know that they're trans. Same way they do it in a lot of anime. People don't even know a lot of their a lot of their anime characters are actually trans. They just don't say nothing. Um, so it would either be during Pride Month for me, or during like a specific like a very trans specific day, like Trans Day of Remembrance, or on one of the days where we represent trans people, um, during those times, like, or like again Pride Month, specifically because Pride Month gets so big. A lot of corporations like to social climb us for the coin during Pride Month, and they always real quick to promote queer positivity during Pride Month, anyways. So might as well promote a queer-based game that incorporates not just trans people, queerness, but also people who are affected by like incorporating like the HIV topic in the game, and things like that. I think it would be very important. So probably Pride Month for me. It's probably specifically like Juneteenth because it represents Black folks. It represents people who are affected within that community.
So I have been laughing and sitting here because a bunch of conversations have led me to this. I didn't know that this was going to be a question. It's just going to be called pink because that's my favorite color.
Okay.
It's gonna be a cat. It will be the main character because I just had a conversation with some folks about how cats are really good about consent. They let you know before they don't want you to touch them no more. And it literally will be that. Like I think it'll be normalizing all of the things, conversations, behaviors. Like you got to go get tested. You got to talk to your friends about stuff. Like just normalizing those behaviors that we've been talking about within the game. And it would be released on Father's Day because everybody needs a daddy.
Yes.
You may not have a father, but everybody needs a daddy.
Okay. Mars and Mia. I know it's just sporadic.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not very creative in this aspect. I don't play video games. So, my thought process is again goes straight to The Sims. Let's make it English now and let's create more dialogue and dynamics and support and things like that. You know what I mean? Because I don't know. I was someone who could get lost in The Sims for days, not even just hours, days.
The Sims
And
3.0.
if
Your
there's
version.
all these different dialogues and resources and things that are happening, I think that I don't know, that's where my mind goes into something that I would create, I guess.
For me, I didn't get to say it earlier, but I play computer games, and one of my favorite computer games is called Sim City, and City Skylines. And so I think I would add components to that because I noticed in City Skylines they have like a senior citizens home now. They have a research center, a public health research center, and so a lot of the mods in the game you have to like balance the society. And so like introducing the HIV to it, I think that would be like really cool and see how the city manager balances what services should be directed towards that community. Are you going to bankrupt your city? Are you going to listen to that community because they pay taxes? Are you going to, create city audiences? Like you have to get tested to live in a city. It's a really like a micromanage type of game. So I think I would do something around that. And just for the, for giggles, I release mine on World AIDS Day.
Well, you guys have innovative ways. For me, I think I loved how when Pokemon became so from indoors to outdoors that people were going to the most extreme place to try to catch Pikachu, right? And so I think my game would be very, it will be so intersectional that even with all gaming, so it will be virtual, it will be cardboard, it will be outdoors, it will be group team playing and tag teaming that. You know what I'm saying? In order for you to level up, you have to go to this clinic and at least sit through something or get tested. You know what I'm saying? And then open up the passcode to you to go back into the house, or you have to have this set conversation with this other gamer about this topic. You know what I'm saying? And like make it so innovative. And I think that as community activists and advocates, I think that, and in the gaming community, there are some infrastructures that are already doing it. I mean, so maybe just re-strategizing versus going to companies. How about we go to our nonprofit organizations, help them create a program that becomes this thing, and that these corporations will want it back. And it becomes this thing, right? Because we have the knowledge, we have the community, and we pretty much shift and shape culture and language, right? And so, very Tina Turner, one of my favorite songs. She was like, "We don't need another hero, we don't need another hero. All we need is our way home." And so sometimes we become our own chess piece in this game called life. So I want you all give your final thoughts on how we can support you, and please give your social media handle and gaming handle so people can want to connect with you. So I want you to give your final thoughts on how we can support you and your social media handles and gaming handles. I'll start with the order that the panelist was introduced. So Mars.
Hello, everyone. All right. So for me, my social media, so I do art. I am an artist. So I have a art Instagram. So you can find me under Cosmic Mars. What else am I supposed to be telling you? I'm so sorry.
And ways that we can support you.
Ways that you can support me. I mean, I'm part of the HIV Stops With Me campaign. So, you know what I mean? There's a lot of different things. I mean, support me by advocating or continuing to advocate or finding, some kind of volunteer position, if you will, to do more in the community. I think that's what I would ask of people besides following my art Instagram and checking out my art. And my whole motto with my art is I just, at a time where it's kind of dark and gray, I'm really trying to just bring a splash of color to people's lives and people's walls. So let me know if I can help with that. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mars. Thank you for your commentary and being participating on this panel. Robert?
Robert, thank you so much to all of you. I'm so glad that we did this. You can support me by becoming an expert on what undetectable means and teaching 3 other people. That is what I want you to do. And encourage them to become experts on what it means. And you can find me all over social media at Papa Bear Podcast.
Thank you, Robert. Mother Lamia?
Yes, my handles are Mother Lamia on Facebook. Also, you can support me by following the House of Encore Ministries, thehouseofoncore.org, the House of Encore Ministries on Facebook, and to get tested as well. to know your status, because everyone has a status. If you're positive or negative, either way, you should be good. And also, don't forget to visit hivstartswithme.org and look for me, Lamia. Watch all my videos, and while you're there, check out all the other 30 spokesmodels that we have here within New York State. And be kind and love one another and love yourself.
Thank you, Mother Lamia, for your commentary and being part of this panel. Jose, say I got it right. Jose.
Yes. I was not prepared for this question, so I literally have nothing in terms of both. But and I still don't know what to say. So yeah.
That's
I'm good.
okay.
Sorry.
Listen.
I don't know. I don't have social media to give out. I don't have any way to support me. I'm just chilling.
Okay. Miss Aria.
I think this is the first time I've seen you turn red on the panel.
No me mira.
Support a trans person. Tell your trans friends you love them. Tell them that they matter. Support a HIV positive person. Tell them you love them. Tell them that they matter. Sometimes we need to hear it. Sometimes we as queer people, we lose ourselves with everything going on in quarantine and losing family and friends due to who we are. You know, so sometimes we just need to be reminded that we are loved. So you can do that for me. To show my support, I am a trans advocate, an activist. I am a counselor. So if anybody who's watching is battling with their gender identity and wants some support, needs somebody to talk to, if you're in the New York area or even in any other area and you just need help finding out how to start your process, you can reach out to me. My social media handling, I have Facebook, which is Aria Malave. My Instagram is ARYA period M. Oh, whoa. ARYA underscore XO period OX. And my Twitter and PSN is the same, which is Aria Dragoness underscore.
Yes, thank you, Aria. And the way my name is Jala Serrano. You can follow me on my social media handle, which is Jala underscore the brand on IG, Jala Serrano on Facebook. And just allow me, my peers to continue to have our humanizing experience. And I just ask you all just to be kind to yourself, take up space when you can, and understand to also don't take up too much space when you don't need to. And to my panelists on here, you are all my sheroes and heroes, and also my villains, because what you would call it, our cards can flip, and sometimes the villains have the best outfits, the best powers, and everything. Okay, and there's always a story to why they became that way. Ask Cruella de Vil, right? If you haven't watched it. And so, what you would call it, heroes and villains, our stories walk on the same plane. And so I thank you all. I uplift you all. And I want you all to just enjoy the rest of your day, your evening. And give those gaming hands a little break. Carpal tunnel's real.
Everyone's on the Discord. I am Matemago. Matemago. That means math magician in Spanish. Matemago. Reach out to me on Discord if you could.
Bam. See?
Very Spanish for that one.
Yes.
Yes, with a minute to spare.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.